Mr. Speaker, at this time I'm happy to yield 5 minutes to a hard-working member of the Rules Committee, the gentleman from Pasco, Washington, Mr. Hastings.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the ranking member for the time. And Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to House Resolution 157 and the underlying resolution. Mr. Speaker, our nation is engaged in a global war on terror, a war that we did not seek, but a war that was brought to our shores on September 11, 2001. Today, we fight an enemy without borders that is determined to destroy our nation by any means necessary. An al-Qaeda leader said that they have the right to, quote, kill 4 million Americans, 2 million of them children, and to exile as many as twice as many and wound and cripple thousands, end quote. The president of Iran has called a world without America and Israel, quote, possible and feasible, end quote. It's also undeniable that Iraq is a central front on the war on terror. But you don't have to take my word for it, Mr. Speaker. The terrorists themselves had told us it is so. Al-Qaeda's deputy leader has repeatedly said that Afghanistan and Iraq are the, quote, two most crucial fields, end quote, in the Islamist war. In a letter, he said that expelling Americans from Iraq is the first step in expanding the jihad wave. If this, Mr. Speaker, is what the terrorists are telling us, why should we not believe them? As much as I wish that our troops were home, I recognize that arbitrarily pulling out of Iraq would provide a sanctuary for terrorists and have serious consequences for our U.S. security. A self-sustaining government there is critical to our security here. I share the frustration of all Americans who had hoped that the Iraqis would be protecting and governing themselves by now, but that simply is not the reality. Previous strategies to stabilize Iraq has not succeeded, and things cannot continue as they have been. In order to succeed, Iraqis must step up and take responsibility for their own security. And under the new strategy, Mr. Speaker, announced last month, they will be held more accountable in the future. Some say this new strategy is wrong, yet they fail to say what is right. They call for an arbitrary pullout, yet have not answered the question, what then? They seek to cut off funding for our troops, yet offer no plan for fighting terrorists. Mr. Speaker, there's no easy answer, but simply declaring that we don't wish to be at war anymore does not make our enemies surrender. Withholding military personnel, failing to provide funds for our troops, or pulling out of Iraq with no plan to win the war on terror are simply not options. The consequence of failure is simply too dire. If we are defeated, Iraq will become a haven that our enemies will use to launch attacks against us. The Middle East will remain destabilized. Terrorists will fight us on our soil and will send a dangerous signal to countries like Iran, North Korea, and Syria, and embolden terrorists around the world. The Baker-Hamilton Commission warned specifically against a precipitous withdrawal. They said, and I quote, the near-term results would be a significant power vacuum, greater human suffering, regional destabilization, and a threat to the global economy. Al-Qaeda would depict our withdrawal as a historic victory, end quote. So our challenge, Mr. Speaker, is to insist on victory and not accept defeat. So accordingly, I will not vote to deny our troops the support they need to protect themselves in America. The non-binding resolution before us today is contradictory on supporting the troops. On the first page, it says we will continue to support the troops in Iraq. But on the next page, it expresses opposition to sending reinforcements that our military says are needed to support our troops currently on the ground. So, Mr. Speaker, how can you support the troops but not the mission? Let me say that I will not, again, vote to deny our troops the support they need to protect themselves in America. What I would vote for, if given the opportunity, is a plan that would have the force of law, that would set benchmarks to measure progress, that would ensure that funding for our troops is not cut off, and that would keep Congress fully apprised so that they can make informed decisions. In closing, I would just say that we must not forget the sacrifice that our troops are making. We are fighting the enemy abroad, so we'll not have to fight them here. The bottom line is that this is about America and our security and a set of enemies who have said again and again that their goal is to destroy us. Mr. Speaker, I encourage my colleagues to oppose this closed rule and the underlying resolution. I yield back my balance of my time to the ranking member.